My goal today is to help you feel ready for your quiz on Monday, so we're going to review over sections 7.1 to 7.4. Let's look at the very first section of your notes for today. It asks us to identify the like terms, the constants, and the coefficients of the expressions. So remember, like terms are things that are alike. Does anyone remember what a constant is?
A number that stands alone.
It's a number that stands alone. Very good. And does anyone remember what a coefficient is?
A number that got a variable with it.
You are correct. It's the number part of a variable term. So let's go ahead, first things, before we do anything else, let's just go ahead and underline the things that are alike. Is there anything else that's like that for x?
Negative 2x.
Negative 2x, okay? If you think about it, they're both in the x family. Now, are there any other things in the x family? No, that's it. Let's talk about this. 10, is there anything in the number or the constant family?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. Thank you for remembering to include that negative with it. Good job. So let's talk about the like terms. Simply now, all we're going to do is just kind of write what we just came up with. So the first thing you know that is alike is 4x and negative 2x. So we just put them in parentheses so I know that they're grouped together. Then I'm going to do another group, which is 10 and negative 4. So now that we've figured out what our like terms are, let's go down here to the constant. You just reminded me that a constant is a number that stands all by itself with nothing else attached to it. What are my two constants?
10 and negative 4.
10 and negative 4. Okay, remember, it matters whether or not you have that negative sign there. All right, and then once again, you just told me that coefficients are the number part of the variable term. What are my variable terms that you see up there? 4x and negative 2x. Now, I don't want the variable part. I only want the number part of the variable term. So what are my coefficients? 4 and negative 2. Any questions on number 1? Number 2 is asking us to simplify the expression. What does that word simplify mean?
Simple.
Make it more simple. It doesn't ask you to solve, just to make it more simple. Hope, do you see any like terms here?
7w and negative 2w.
Very good job. And then that negative 6 is all by itself. Avery, will you go ahead and combine the like terms? Okay, double check. This right here says subtract. 5w, and then what else do I need to bring down? Minus 6. Okay, always bring that sign down with it. Okay, so we've talked about this before, but always remember the variable part comes first, and then your constant part will always come second, or it'll come right at the end of when you write that. Let's go to the next one. We're going to we got to do something first, okay? Do you guys remember distributive property? Yes. Everything you do to the whatever you have on the outside, you've got to do it to every single thing on the inside, okay? So let's go ahead and do that part first, okay? Let's drop down the 12y and our negative sign. Now let's do this part first. What is 2 times 4?
6.
Double check.
8.
2 times 4 is 8. Now, we've got a minus and a plus. What happens whenever you are multiplying a negative 2 times a negative 3y? Your answer becomes, it becomes positive. So what is negative 2 times negative 3y?
Positive 6.
Positive 6y. Now we're going to go back to do it exactly like we were doing it before. Let's combine some like terms. Addison, do you see anything that's like term?
12y and 6y.
You are correct. And then negative 8 is all by itself. Nicholas, go ahead and combine the like terms for me.
So the 12y plus 6y is 18y.
18y.
And then negative 8.
And just bring down your minus 8. Remember, once again, you always want to put the variable term first, and then second will come your constant over here, okay? Any questions on problem B? All right, let's move on to problem 3. Problem 3 asks us to write the verbal phrase as a variable expression and let y represent the variable. Is it asking me to solve anything?
No.
Nope, we're just writing an expression, okay? So be careful on your quiz. Always look to see what the instructions are asking you. So we're simply going to read from left to right unless we have any kind of special words inside of there. I want you guys real quick to pull out your yellow notes from 7.1. There are two main things that we highlighted on that yellow paper that I handed out to you from 7.1. The first thing was parenthesis words. What are our two phrases that are parenthesis words?
The sum of the difference of.
The sum of and the difference of. Do I have either of those here on problem A?
No.
No. Next up is my turnaround words. What's the key word that's a turnaround word? Than. Less than, more than, fewer than. Do you see anything with the word than here?
No.
No. So that means I can just read from left to right. So this tells me here to let y represent the variable. So instead of saying a number, what will I write?
Y.
Y. Then next up we've got increased by, which would be a what?
Plus.
Plus. And the last thing is?
5.
5. So that's all it is. You're just writing an expression. That means a number increased by 5. Problem B says the quotient of a number and 5 is 10. Check on your paper. Do you have any parenthesis words or turnaround words?
No.
No, we do not. So we're just going to read it from left to right. The first thing says the quotient of. What does that mean?
Division.
Division. So whenever we're doing division, I always want you just to put the fraction bar, okay? So we did the quotient of. Now a number. What should be a number?
Y.
Y. A number and 5. Where should the 5 go? Underneath it. Okay, so now as I read it, you want to just double check. That says the quotient of a number and 5. Now I have left is 10. What should I write?
Equals 10.
Equals 10. Number 4 says to write a verbal sentence for the equation. So a verbal sentence just means you're going to be writing out some words, okay? I want you to try to do problem A on your own. Okay, very good. So we're doing it from left to right. And you know that this means to divide because a fraction bar always means to divide. So this means 10 divided by. Now notice, when Nick just told us that, he did not say 10 divided by x. This is one thing I do not want you to do on your quiz. We're trying to get rid of x because it doesn't have to be x. It could be any variable. So whenever you can put any variable, you're just going to use the words what?
A number.
A number. So 10 divided by a number. Then what?
A number. But is 1.
Is 1. Okay, did anyone write anything different than that? Addison, what'd you write?
Well, I think it needs to have like a.
Okay, so he said the quotient of 10 and a number is 1. Yeah, you could do that too. That's totally fine. If you wanted to also, instead of this word is, you could have said what? Equals, all right? Just make sure it's words. I don't want you to go ahead and just write the equals sign. I want you to just use words. If it ever asks you for a verbal sentence, you want to make sure you're using words, okay? Let's go to the next one. Y plus 12 equals negative 4. Who wants to do this one for me? Hope. Okay, good job. So the first thing you want to do, instead of writing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever it would be, just write a number, then what? Okay, she said increased by
12
is negative 4. Fantastic, all right? There are some words she could have used different. Who has something that you wrote down that was a little bit different? Nick, what'd you write?
I wrote a number added to 12 equals negative 4.
Okay, a number and 12 equals negative 4. That's totally fine. You could put a number plus 12 equals negative 4. All of those are totally fine. And if you look at that yellow sheet right there, there's tons of different words that you can use whenever you have to write a verbal sentence. Number 5 asks us to write the verbal sentence as an equation and solve the equation. So this is a little different than something we've done before. We are trying to write an equation and we're using x as the variable. So let's just check to see on our yellow paper. Remember, this yellow paper is not going to be with you on your quiz, so you've got to have it memorized. Parenthesis words, do I have any of those?
Yes. No.
Okay, no parenthesis words. What about turnaround words? No. So let's go ahead and just read from left to right. It says a number decreased by 4 is negative 10. Does anyone think they know that? Hope?
I know it.
Okay, we know that starting off with a number, it's going to be x.
Minus 4 equals negative 10.
Very good. Okay, so I put it right there just so that I could do my work, but I also know I'm going to set it right here. X minus 4 equals negative 10. Now it has asked me to also solve it. Remember, we gave some steps. There were 3 steps that told us we've got to figure out whenever it says to solve something what x equals, okay? Identify the variable. We know that it's x. What is not allowing x? Remember, if we kind of take this and we split this, this is the left side, this is the right side. What is not allowing x to be by itself?
-4.
-4.
Okay, subtract by 4. What's the opposite of subtract by 4?
Add by 4.
Add by 4. Remember, step number 3 had told us what you do to one side, you must do to the other side. So, what happens to the -4 and the +4? They cancel out, and I'm left with plain old what? X. Now, to try to find my answer, -10 plus 4. Same sign, add the numbers, keep the sign. Different sign, subtract the numbers, and take the sign of the larger number. So what is -10 plus 4?
-6.
-6. So whenever you are writing down what your answer is, we know that x equals -6. All right, let's do it together, see if you got it correct. The sum of 2 and a number is 6. What does the sum of mean? Add it, okay? So we know that we've got to do 2 plus x equals 6. Once again, you're just reading from left to right. Then I'm going to write it over here where my equation is. And I've got to find my answer. What's not allowing my variable to be alone?
2.
The 2. What's the opposite of plus 2?
-2.
-2 or -2. What I do to one side, I've got to do to the other. These 2 cancel out, and I'm left with just the x on the left side. And what is 6 minus 2?
4.
4. So your correct answer is x equals 4.
Forgot the parentheses.
All right, because the sum of was a parenthesis word, you are correct. We want to go ahead and put parentheses around it, okay? Now, you would use that parenthesis word type thing if your problem was a little bit bigger, but we do want to get into the habit of always putting the parentheses if it's a parenthesis word phrase. These ones are asking us to solve the equation and to check our solution. First things first, identify the variable. What's my variable? M. What is not allowing M to be by itself?
No.
Subtract by 10. What's the opposite of subtract by 10?
Add by 10.
Add by 10. What you do to one side,
Must do to the other.
you must do to the other. We've got to be fair. What happens? Let's just work on this right side right here. What happens to -10 and +10? It cancels out because a number and its opposite always equals 0. I'm left with what? M, so I'll bring that down. And then let's go ahead and work on this side over here. What is -12 plus 10?
-2.
-2. All right, whenever you do this, I would like the variable to be first. So just switch that up. Do you guys remember how to check something? Okay, you start with that original right there, but we're going to bring that down here. -12 equals M minus 10. Do I know what M is?
Yes.
What is it?
-2.
So I'm going to get rid of the M, and instead I'm going to put in -2. So working from left to right, I'm just going to bring that -12 down. And now, what is -2 minus 10? -12. Same sign, add the numbers, and keep the sign. All right, for this problem, I've got 2/3. Do you guys remember what we have to do whenever we have a fraction? You have to flip it, or you have to use the reciprocal, okay? So what's the reciprocal of 2/3?
3 halves.
3 halves. If I multiply the left side by 3 halves, what do I have to do to the right side?
Multiply by 3 halves.
Multiply it also by 3 halves. Okay, 6 is the same thing as 6 over 1. Nicholas, what happens to the left side? 3 halves times 2/3.
Yeah,
It cancels out, and what are we left with on the left side?
N.
Just an N. On the right side, is there anything I can cross reduce?
X and 2.
6 and 2. What does the 6 become?
3.
And the 2?
1.
All right. What is 3 over 1 times 3 over 1?
9 over 1.
9 over 1, or plain old
9.
9. Okay, now let's check it. Who wants to check it for me? Addison.
Okay, so you bring down the 2/3 and then the n, which is 9. So you do the n is a 9. And then then you do not 1 and 9 can cancel out to 1 and 3. And then you multiply it into 6, and you bring in 6 equals 6 then.
Very good, because 6 does equal 6, okay? So you can always use the checking method just to help yourself know or understand if you got it correct. Negative g equals 15. There is a coefficient there that you just can't see. What is it? 1. There's an understood 1 there. If you only have 1 g, then that is a 1, okay? What is the variable?
G.
G. I want the g to be alone. What is not allowing the g to be alone? Not just negative 1. It is not subtract by 1.
Negative.
Double check. What do you think it is? If a number is right next to a letter,
Multiply by 1.
it means to multiply. So what is the opposite of multiply by negative 1?
Divide.
Divide by?
Negative 1.
Divide by negative 1. Okay, so always be careful. Whenever you have a number right next to a letter, it means you have to multiply. Please do not get tricked up just because there's a negative. That doesn't mean it's subtraction. If a number is next to a letter, it means to multiply it, okay? Jack, what happens to this negative 1 divided by negative 1?
It equals 0.
It doesn't equal 0.
Oh, cancels out.
It cancels out because it equals 1, and then you're left with what? A G. All right, guys, what is 15 divided by negative 1?
Negative 15.
Negative 15, because remember, if you are ever dividing by only one negative, your answer will always be negative. Now, this, when we had this as a homework problem yesterday, quite a few people got stumped on it. Remember, you're just going to take this and bring this right down here. So it says negative, and I could stick that 1 in there if I want, negative 1g equals 15. Do I know what g is?
No. Negative 15.
G is negative 15. We just discovered that. So now instead of multiplying by g, I'm going to multiply by negative 15. Notice, this is a negative multiplied by a negative. Whenever you have a negative multiplied by a negative, your answer is always positive. So what's negative 1 times negative 15?
Positive 15.
It is positive or regular old 15, and that does equal 15. All right, let's go to the next one. 13z equals 39. Identify the variable.
Z.
What is not allowing z to be alone?
13.
Not just 13. What sign?
Multiply.
Multiply by 13. What's the opposite of multiply by 13?
Divide by 13.
Divide by 13. What I do to one side, you must do to the other. Matthew, what happens to 13z over 13?
Cancels out. I have left with a Z.
You're canceling it out. All you're left with is a z. Logan, what is 39 divided by 13? 3 is correct. Okay, so now we've discovered what our answer is. I've got to go back and check it. Who wants to check it for me? Go for it.
Let's go. All right, so first, we're going to do that since z equals 3. We're going to do 13 times z. And we're going to switch that z out to be a 3.
Do I just stick the 3 there?
Put a dot in between the 13 and the 3.
Okay, I don't prefer a dot. What do I want you to put in there?
Parentheses.
Parentheses. It means the same thing as a dot, but I would love you to use parentheses.
That equals 39.
Okay,
Yeah, at the bottom you put 39 and 39 check mark.
that is correct. Okay, because all you're doing right here is you are noticing, you're working it out, 13 times 3 equals 39. The final 3 questions of today are asking you about some terms. You're going to want to know your terms. This is all from, I believe, 7.2. So go back and double check these terms, but let's just see what we know already. What is a number that stands alone called?
Constant.
A constant. Next up, what is a term with a variable in it called? Very good job. It's pretty simple. It's called a variable term. Jack, did that come from 7.2? All right, very good job. Okay, so go back through to 7.2 and memorize and look over those terms there, okay? Last one, number 9. What is the number part of a variable term called?
Coefficient.
That one is the coefficient. All right, so at this point, I want you guys to spend a little bit of time over the weekend studying 7.1 through 7.4 for your quiz on Monday.